2020. Yes, good afternoon viewers in Indonesia and Singapore. Market Headlines is ready to provide you a number of informations from the business, economic and capital market sectors. With me, Fajar Wayong, this is Market Headlines. Yes, viewers, we're going to start Market Headlines by looking at the Jakarta Composite Index intraday movement. Open at the level of 5,254.64 and then approaching the closing time on the first session. The index was on the level of 5,314.91 and then the index was showing strengthening trend by the second session closing time. Index was closed at the level 5,295.17. In short, GCI was strengthening 0.9%. And next, we're going to see the sectoral movement leading the dynamics of today's trading. We got trade as the leader of strengthening. We got finance went up 1.36%, construction went up by 1.22%, and infrastructure went up by 0.23%. And the leader of the weakening trend, we got agriculture went down by 0.22%. And as the top gainers in today's trading, here's the list of the stocks. BBRI closed up by 5.39%, closed at the level of 3,520. MNCN up by 6.25%, closed at the level of 835, while MDKA closed up by 3.31% at the level of 1,870, while UNTR or United Tractors went up by 2.28%, closed at the level of 23,600. Meantime, the top losers for today's trading. Smartfren went down by 5.25%, closed at the level of 505, while INDF or Indofood went down by 1.02% to 7,250. While Ramayana Lestari Sentosa went down by 1.54% to 640, and BHAT closed declined by 1.32% to 450. And next, we're going to see the intraday movement of rupiah. Towards US dollar, open at the level of 14,750. Rupiah was also showing weakening trend towards US dollar and was closed at the level of 14,856. In summary, rupiah was weakening 0.77%. Garment manufacturer Pan Brothers is eyeing an opportunity to export its personal protective equipment to some regions following the issuance of permits by the government.
Garments manufacturer Pan Brothers is eyeing an opportunity to export its personal protective equipment or PPE to regions such as the Americas, Europe, Southeast Asia, and Africa following the issuance of permits by the government. Vice President Director Anne Patricia Sutanto said that the company was planning to export the PPE to several countries in those regions, including the United States, Canada, France, Italy, Singapore, and South Africa. She went on to say that the publicly listed company currently produces about 3 million to 5 million items of PPE per annum, but it could increase the production to its maximum capacity of 10 million PPE items. Other than expanding PPE sales overseas, Anne said that company was also planning to expand its partnerships with existing clients. In the same time, the company plans to expand its production capacity to 130 million garment pieces annually by 2021 from the current 117 million through automation and digitalizations in all of its factories spread across the country. From all sources for IDX Channel.
National flag carrier Garuda Indonesia urged the government to reconsider its plan to develop 10 new tourist destinations and instead focus on tourism recovery amid the COVID-19 crisis.
National flag carrier Garuda Indonesia President Director Irfan Setiaputra has urged the government to reconsider its plan to develop 10 new tourist destinations and instead focus on tourism recovery amid the current COVID-19 crisis, which continues to batter the sector. The airline suggested that the Tourism and Creative Economy Ministry focus its tourism revival efforts on a single tourist spot to attract foreign tourists given the slump in visitors in recent months. Irfan added that Bali remained the top destination for airlines during the pandemic. The COVID-19 crisis has battered foreign tourist arrivals to Indonesia amid international border closures and travel restrictions. Foreign visits plummeted 59.96% year-on-year to 3.09 billion in the first half of the year, Statistic Indonesia data shows. Meantime, the Tourism and Creative Economy Ministry expects a full recovery of foreign tourist arrivals by 2025, while it estimates foreign tourist arrivals to reach between 2.8 billion and 4 billion visitors this year, well below the government's initial target of 18 million. From all sources for IDX Channel.
Market Headline will be right back after this quick break. Stay tuned.
Saksikan IDX Channel, your trustworthy economic, business, and capital market channel.
Rangkuman sentimen yang berhasil dihimpun oleh tim redaksi kami, di mana 3 emiten asal Indonesia masuk ke dalam daftar 12 saham dengan tingkat keyakinan tinggi pilihan JP Morgan.
Journal of Medias menyatakan, potensi vaksinnya untuk mencegah COVID-19 menghasilkan respon kekebalan kuat pada semua 45 pasien dalam uji coba tahap awal pada manusia. Dari dalam negeri, Presiden Joko Widodo akan membubarkan 18 lembaga di bawah pemerintahannya.
Senang sekali saya David San Opel dan dapat hadir menemani Anda dalam program spesial dialog webinar on TV.
Setiap minggunya kita akan membahas tema-tema yang sangat menarik. Apa kabar ibu-ibu sekalian? Sehat ya?
Salah satu ambisi daripada Kementerian Koperasi dan UMKM bersama Spesco adalah koperasi keren, baru, digital gitu kan, yang kita bisa IT.
Perjuangan belum selesai. Saatnya kita bangkit dengan semangat bekerja. Kerja bersama, kita bangkit. Selamat HUT RI ke-75. Untuk Indonesia Maju.
Welcome back to Market Headlines. The government expects Indonesia's state budget deficit to remain wide next year to provide room for efforts to support economic recovery and structural reforms. The government expects Indonesia's state budget deficit to remain wide next year to provide room for efforts to support economic recovery and structural reforms amid the pandemic-induced uncertainty. The government has proposed 2.74 quadrillion rupiah or 186 billion US dollar in state expenditure next year, while state income is expected to reach 1.77 quadrillion rupiah. The resulting budget deficit is therefore projected to reach 971.2 trillion rupiah or 5.5% of the GDP next year, which compares to an estimated 6.34% of GDP this year as the government continues its stimulus next year to start economic activity. President of Republic of Indonesia Joko Widodo assured the public that the deficit would be funded using secure financing sources and would be prudently managed. By optimizing the budget deficit, the government plans to provide 356.5 trillion rupiah or $24.04 billion in stimulus spending next year to bolster the economic recovery and procure the coronavirus vaccines. From all sources, IDX Channel. So viewers, starting from a health problem, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has spread to social problems, economic problems, and even to the financial sectors. Many countries have handled extraordinary things, especially through fiscal stimulus. Information regarding fiscal stimulus in a number of countries is in the first graphic. Let's take a look. So this is fiscal strategy amidst COVID-19 pandemic. United States of America, or US, allocates 13.6% of its GDP for fiscal stimulus, while the GDP growth in the second quarter minus 9.5%. And one of the biggest economic in European Union, Germany, posted minus 11.7% GDP growth in the second quarter of 2020, while the country has allocated 24.8% of its GDP for fiscal stimulus, while the other country with the fiscal stimulus 6.2% of its GDP, and it's quite good in the second quarter, while posted 3.2% or positive GDP growth in the second quarter of this year. While we compare to Indonesia, President Joko Widodo say that in the 2020 fiscal deficit, it has been widened to 6.34% of GDP, while second quarter of GDP growth in this year minus 5.32%. So we can say that allocation of fiscal stimulus of each country has not resulting the same number in GDP growth, especially in the second quarter in 2020. So viewers, President Joko Widodo said that the widening of the deficit was carried out considering that the need for state spending for health and economic management increases when state income decreases. Meanwhile, a policy of relaxing a deficit of more than 3% of GDP is still needed, of course, while maintaining prudence, credibility, and fiscal sustainability. Every year, the government always provides specific directions for the state budget, and we have summarized some of the direction for the 2021 state budget in the next graphic. Let's take a look. So, direction of the 2021 state budget draft. The first one is accelerating national economic recovery due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and then the push for structural reforms to increase productivity, innovation, and economic competitiveness. And the third one is accelerating economic transformation to the digital era, and then utilization and anticipation of demographic changes. So all of the direction of 2021 state budget has been delivered by President Joko Widodo in the annual meeting in the House of Representatives last Friday. So because there will be many uncertainties, the government stated that the state budget draft must anticipate the uncertainty of world economic recovery, the volatility of commodity prices, developments in the socio-economic and geopolitical order, and the effectiveness of national economic recovery, as well as the condition and stability of the financial sector. And in the same time, the implementation of fundamental reforms must also be carried out, such as education reform, health reform, social protection reform, and reforming the budgeting and taxation system. And not only the direction, the President has also mentioned the macroeconomic assumption for 2021. Let's move on to the next graphic. So every year, government issued an assumption of macroeconomic for each year, while for 2021, President Joko Widodo said that economic growth is projected at 4.5% up to 5.5%, while inflation rate is projected at 3%. And USD IDR, or the currency for rupiah towards US dollar, is 14,600. And move on to the Indonesian crude price, or ICP oil, at $45 per barrels. And for the next year in 2021, 10 years government bond yield is projected to hit 7%, while gas lifting 1,007,000 BOEPD and oil lifting 705,000 barrels oils per day. And this assumption of macroeconomic indicators has also delivered by the Finance Ministry. So economist Yusuf Randy considers the government's macroeconomic assumptions in the 2021 state budget draft to be quite realistic. However, he gave a note on the economic growth target, where the target jumped high from the government's prediction this year of minus 0.4% up to 1%, with a midpoint slightly above 0%. Yusuf said that economic growth during the period of economic consolidation greatly depended on the realization of government spending, where in the reflection of previous experiences of realizing state spending, it was always hampered by a number of obstacles. And this is what the government must pay attention to. And then what about the posture of state revenues and expenditures in the next year? Let's go to the next graphic. So state budget posture in 2021 draft in trillion rupiah, while revenue is projected to reach 1,776.4 trillion rupiah and spending or expenditure in the next year in 2021 2,747.5 trillion rupiah. So we can say that the spending is bigger than the revenue. Then the government expects the deficit to hit 971.2 trillion rupiah or 5.5% of GDP, while it is still smaller than the deficit in 2020 at 6% of GDP. Yes, like it or not, the government decided to again use the budget deficit scheme. However, the government ensures that the 2021 budget deficit will be financed by utilizing safe and carefully managed financing sources. The government is committed to maintaining fiscal sustainability so that the level of debt remains within controllable limits. One of the contributors to the budget deficit is the National Economic Recovery Budget. How big is it? The information is in the next graphic. So in 2021 state budget draft, President Joko Widodo also said that the National Economic Recovery Program will be continued in the next year. Well, the budget has been delivered also in trillion rupiah. While we go to the first sector, healthcare is allocated 25.4 trillion rupiah, and social safety net as the second main things, 110.2 trillion rupiah. Ministries and regional government got the allocation 136.7 trillion rupiah, while SME, the government still pay attention for SME, support for SME is allocated as much as 48.8 trillion rupiah, while corporates financing is allocated 14.9 trillion rupiah, and of course the business sectors, the government gives the incentive for business sectors as much as 20.4 trillion rupiah. So this is the summarize of National Economic Recovery Budget for 2021. Yes, viewers, the President emphasized the main things in National Economic Recovery in 2021, namely the procurement of the COVID-19 vaccine, health facilities and infrastructures, laboratories, research and development, and BPJS contribution assistance. In addition, SME assistance will be continued through core interest subsidies, SME financing guarantees, and also placement of funds in banks. So viewers, hopefully the discussion of 2021 draft state budget by the government and the House of Representatives can be carried out constructively and produce the best results. So viewers, stay tuned on Market Headlines. We'll be right back after this break.
Bagaimana outlook UMKM di 2020 ini, Pak Leonard?
Saya ingin mengajak terutama anak-anak muda bagaimana caranya supaya nantinya ini bisa berkooperasi dengan baik. Dan ini sudah dimulai.
Visi dari IndiHome itu ada 3, yaitu kita untuk memanage mineral, kemudian kita juga masuk ke hilirisasi, dan yang ketiga kita mau sebagai pemain kelas dunia.
Senang sekali saya David San Ovo dan dapat hadir menemani Anda dalam program spesial dialog webinar on TV.
Setiap minggunya kita akan membahas tema-tema yang sangat menarik. Apa kabar ibu-ibu sekalian?
Sehat Bu ya.
Salah satu ambisi daripada Kementerian Koperasi dan UMKM bersama Smesco adalah koperasi keren, baru, digital gitu kan, yang kita bisa IT.
Industri pertambangan, saya melihat bahwa ya ini industri yang kalau dibilang unik ya. Resiko dan hasil itu tidak selalu sejalan. Kita sulit untuk mendapatkan ada penambang-penambang muda yang baru dan yang mau datang ke hutan untuk ketok batu lah. Istilahnya ketok batu untuk mencari tahu apakah ada tambang di sana. Efisiensi itu sesuatu yang harus selalu diperhatikan ya. Semua pengeluaran itu harus reasonable.
Adi akan ada proyek bikin hunian atau tempat tinggal?
Konsepnya adalah membawa kemudahan masyarakat sekitar Jakarta untuk bekerja di pusat kota. Total saat ini Adik Komputer Property mengembangkan 11 titik ya. Kalau Mas baru beli sekarang mungkin udah ke 3.000 sekian pembeli.
Kita bisa mulai merasakan fase 1 di tahun berapa?
Di tahun 2021.
Perjuangan belum selesai. Saatnya kita bangkit dengan semangat bekerja. Kerja bersama, kita bangkit. Selamat HUT RI ke-75. Untuk Indonesia Maju.
Welcome back to Market Headlines. Even in the midst of pandemic, Indonesia successfully posted 3.26 billion US dollar surplus in July. If it is counted from January to July period, Indonesia recorded 8.74 billion US dollar trade surplus.
For the third time in a row in 2020, Indonesia recorded a surplus in trade balance. In July, Indonesia successfully posted 3.26 billion US dollar surplus. July export grew by 14.33% from June to 13.73 billion US dollar. Even though it was 9.9% below the value of shipments in the same month of last year. Still, the pace of contractions was lower than previous predictions of a 16.65% drop.
Sekarang kalau kita gabungkan antara ekspor dan impor, maka kita bisa melihat bahwa neraca perdagangan kita pada bulan Juli ini mengalami surplus sebesar 3,26 miliar. Surplus ini jauh lebih besar dibandingkan surplus pada bulan Juni 2020, juga jauh lebih besar dibandingkan dengan posisi bulan Juli 2019, di mana pada waktu itu kita mengalami defisit 0,28 miliar US dollar.
Speaking about imports, July imports plunged by 32.55% on the annual basis to 10.47 billion US dollar. This was steeper than 22.48% fall expected in the first place. From Jakarta, Muhammad Olga for IDX Channel.
Meantime, Statistik Indonesia noted that precious metals, jewelry and gems were commodities that recorded the highest export value growth in July 2020.
Indonesia exported 4.3 billion US dollar in precious metals, gems and jewelry. The number went up significantly by 79% compared to the last month period. While total export during the same period fell by 5.5% year-on-year, as Statistik Indonesia's data show. Head of Statistik Indonesia, Suharyanto, stated that precious metals, jewelry, and gems increased considerably due to a very high increase in the price of gold. Investors rushing to park their money in safe haven assets as concerns grow about the second wave of coronavirus pandemic and its impact on the global economy. Many precious metals were exported to Switzerland, Singapore, and Japan in July 2020. Apart from gold, 4 other commodities also recorded significant export growth, among of all are vehicle and steel export. From all sources, IDX Channel.
And viewers, here it is an update data about coronavirus globally. And the graphic close our market headlines today. Please enjoy our next program on IDX Channel, Your Trustworthy Economic, Business and Capital Market Channel. I'm Fajar Wayong. Have a nice evening.